From the heart of Silicon Valley, it's What's Up in the 90s. An entertaining look at people, places, and things, and how they affect you, your family, and your career as we move into the 90s. Now here's your host, Brian Stuckey.
Hi, Brian Stuckey here. What's up in the 90s? We've got a tremendous show for you. I'm delighted to have Dave Caves, who's a senior citizen, as well as Joe Ferrante, who's the pastor of seniors over at Bethel Church, with us today. We're going to talk about the aging process, and hopefully it's going to be an inspiration to all of us, and as well as educational. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. We're delighted.
Dave, I want to start with you. In a world that's kind of geared towards the youth movement, pretty much, you know, seniors sometimes probably feel like they're left out in the cold a little bit. What's it like being in a world like this today as a senior citizen?
Well, I realize that there are some people who are affected that way, but I personally am not, because when I retired, I became active, and visiting nursing homes, I find that some people do get depressed very much. But I like to be with young people. Mm-hmm. And I find that some young people shy away from the seniors a little bit, but we find a good number of them appreciate the seniors. Mm-hmm. And they feel that they have got something to learn from the seniors. They look up to us, and I appreciate that very much.
Mm-hmm. You yourself don't feel it, but is there some seniors that feel a sense of abandonment, do you think? And you mentioned that some younger people might not associate with seniors, but
that's very true. Some people just feel as though the young people don't want to be near them or associate with them, and they sort of turn them aside, and they feel let down, you know, or left out, and it's too bad. Mm-hmm. It's disappointing.
Joe, why is that? Do you think that there's a, you know, is it just a cockiness because the world's geared towards a younger person?
Well, there is really a generation gap, emotionally, physically, mentally. There is a difference. Physically, the young folk are strong and full of life, and all of their drives are at their peak, whereas the aged naturally feel a deterioration a little bit in their strength, and they don't always recall everything as quickly as they want to recall them. Mm-hmm. And so young folk don't like that identity, because someday they're going to be like that, and they're not looking forward to that day.
But you gentlemen seem to be, and I know some of the other people I've been associated with that are seniors, it's nothing that's drawing you back. There might be physical limitations, but your attitudes are excellent. But that's not true with all seniors. A lot of them just feel maybe some depression there, maybe.
Right. At our church, we have a group called Saints Alive. I think it's a terrific name for the aged, and they are very active. We take numerous field trips. In the past, they've gone to Alcatraz, they've gone to rodeos, they've gone to the state capitol in Sacramento. They just love to be about town. And so that, I think, produces a tremendous emotional and mental health in their lives.
It sounds like you guys are rowdy. Is another word for it?
We are.
Another word for it?
Yeah, once in a while I'll kid them and say, now remember, we're saints alive, not saints dead, you know, when they don't want to cooperate, you know.
Okay. Dave, what do you think influences people's attitudes towards seniors?
Well, I think the seniors' attitude themselves, you know, if a senior wants to express themselves and extend themselves a little bit, you know, toward the youth, I don't find any difficulty with it at all. It's when the senior withdraws and gets into that attitude, you know, of they're not wanted, then they develop that sort of a feeling, and it's very injurious to them.
Mm-hmm. What kind of changes do you think that can come about with changing the attitudes that people might have? Is it just by being a living example showing that you're full of life as a senior? What are some of the things that we're doing, Joe?
Well, you have to be outgoing. I've learned this: the more you demand of people, the less they're able to respond emotionally. You have to be self-giving, and you have to simply be available. If you're always expecting your son, your daughter to telephone or your loved ones to visit, I think it produces a negative relationship. My wife and I phone our children often. I think we phone them a little more than they phone us, but we don't put them under the pressure that, how come you haven't called for a while? We just simply have freedom of dialogue and conversation, and I think that puts them at ease, and they enjoy then conversing with you and visiting with you.
Because they don't feel the pressure then?
They don't feel the pressure.
Okay.
You don't have to. It isn't mom and dad crying because they're not there.
Is there ever an attitude that seniors might have that, boy, I raised you up as a child, and now, you know, now that you've got your own family, yeah, is there an attitude at all, Dave, with that?
I don't know. I haven't found that in my family. My boys, after my boys went to college, I said to my wife, I says, I guess we can bid them goodbye, and that was true. They both got married in college, and they set up their own homes, and of course we have good fellowship with them, but no, there's no feeling like that at all.
A successful parenting is to rear your children to the point that you can make them feel absolutely independent of you once they leave the house. Then you have succeeded.
That's a very refreshing view. I don't think people are used to hearing that, but they just feel like they still need to hold on
Yeah,
there.
you did your duty, and then everything else is just gravy and dessert in the way of responding in love later after they leave.
You know, it's kind of funny about that, because I feel like, you know, like with my mother, for example, is that I would feel like I would always want to be with her until the very end, and I imagine, maybe that's an exception, but I know there's a lot of people like myself who want to be there and want to, you know, through thick and thin, you know, just want to be a support. Is that an exception? Do you think that children have an attitude like that, or do you think more of them have an attitude that I'm out of the home and who cares anymore? Based on what
you want to answer that, then
No,
I'll add to it.
I think it's good to have a family relationship, no matter what the position of your children are, even though they're married. They always feel at home. They're always welcome at home. And when they come to visit, we always made them very welcome and tried to do them. But once they got married, I felt that they assumed responsibility as a married person and have their own home, and we would never interfere with their marriage relationships with the husband and wife and establishing their own home. But they're always welcome at home and always kept that communication with home.
That's wonderful. You were
Now, my feeling, Brian, was my kids were welcome to stay home till the day they got married. Now, you know, the habit nowadays is if you're 18 and out of high school, get your own apartment. But in the Italian tradition, our children were welcome to stay until they were married. And our home has always been open to our kids. And I had the same feeling toward my mother and dad that you had towards yours. My mother passed away when I was age 47. And, you know, here I'm older now, but I missed her terribly. I loved her deeply, and she loved me deeply. So we had a close relationship. Dad, too, he was so kind and so remarkable. Once he really changed his lifestyle from the former lifestyle to when he gave his life to Christ. There was such an amazing change that we enjoyed Dad's later years remarkably.
I was going to ask you too. I know you're from Ireland, right,
Yes.
Dave? And you mentioned Italian descent.
Yeah, my folk were from Italy, but I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with that, the American attitude is one, again, I hate to keep using this, but geared towards youth. Is that true in Ireland too? Did you? I don't know if you noticed, folks, but Dave does have a little accent there, and probably picking that
we
up.
like it.
I'll never lose it.
But is it true in Ireland? Is America maybe a little different in that way?
Well, we were very much, there was more of a family relationship closer relationship in Ireland than we find here. What Dad said was law. I mean, we never would question anything that Dad had said, and of course he had to have control because I'm the 11th child of a family of 13, so so he was in control. But there was always love and fellowship in the home. And being raised in a Christian home, of course, it made a difference too.
Sure. What was it like being in a family that big?
Oh, it was great. It was great. We had more fun just in the family. And of course we had a lot of, since I had 8 sisters, there was always a lot of boyfriends around too, so we had a lot of fun as I was growing up. But Dad was very particular, especially on Sunday. And on Sunday evening, we, being belonged to the Presbyterian Church, they had no evening service. But Dad made sure that every Sunday night at 7 o'clock we would all gather in, and he would read the Bible, and we'd all pray, and we had a family, a little family service every Sunday night. And growing up in that kind of an atmosphere, it made a big impression on me from my life.
Well, the family's big enough to where you could have a choir.
Oh yes, we did. We had I had 3 sisters. I had 3 sisters in the choir, sang in the church choir. So we always had a song service too.
That's wonderful. It sounds like a very stable background.
Oh yeah.
I know one thing. I came from what is considered a large family. I have 5 older sisters, and I know it must have been a tough time on your parents when they're angry and they're yelling at you. They go right through the list of all the kids.
Yeah, all the names and get to yours. Mark, Wayne, Joe, Francis. That's the
Got
one
it, bingo. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to get in there some backgrounds with Joe and Dave, and we're going to be joined by Mason Sturgill, who's going to be joining our show for the first time tonight, and we're looking forward to that. Before we take a break, I want to thank California Mortgage for sponsoring us, as they always do. If you're interested in any mortgage loan information, please give me a call at 559-0100. We'll be right back.
Every year, thousands of babies die from choking, suffocating, or other breathing emergencies. Just imagine how many of them could be saved if only they came with instructions. Please learn American Red Cross Infant and Child CPR. American Red Cross. We help you help others.
There was a time when people helped their neighbors, and together they built a stronger community. This spirit lives on today in NeighborWorks, a unique partnership of local residents, business, and government leaders. NeighborWorks volunteers have rebuilt over 100,000 homes, restoring pride to millions of neighbors. So help a neighbor and a nation. Join NeighborWorks. Reversing decline, rebuilding pride.
Welcome back to What's Up in the 90s. We're here again with Joe Ferrante, Dave Caves, and we're joined here now with Mason Sturgill.
Thank you.
And I've asked Mason to come on, offer a different perspective and ask some questions. And Mason, it's your ballgame right now, fellow.
Okay. Well, first off, I mean, I know I used to work for Joe's older brother. Is Russ your older brother?
No, he's younger than
younger?
I. I'm the
Okay.
oldest of the 4.
And well, that's a compliment to you. Then.
I don't know.
And I wanted to ask you, kind of, what are to both of y'all, what would be some of your fondest memories? You know, growing up as a child. Not only what were the fondest ones, but what were some of the things that became heartaches later on? You know, as you grew older and matured, and how you dealt with them.
Well, I'll defer to Dave first, since he's a little younger than I.
Well, a few months after I got married, about a year after I got married, my wife was pregnant for 3 months, and I was called into the service. And of course, during the course after my basic training, I was assigned to the 93rd General Hospital and sent overseas and landed in England. But we were assembled at Colwyn Bay first, and there was, before D-Day, there was many hospital units and Air Force. There were many of the service were assembled there in North Wales. And of course, I felt terrible leaving home. I didn't see my oldest boy until he was 21 months old, after I got back after the service. But I had a wonderful experience. When I was in Colwyn Bay waiting, they needed 28 men to operate a small hospital in North Ireland. And out of all the assembly of men that were there, I was one of the 28 men that were selected. So I got back, and when I got to our destination here, I found it was in Kilray, 12 miles from where I was born, and for about 6 weeks. Well, we were there until the mother outfit, the 93rd General, took over an 800-bed hospital outside of Worcester, England. I was able to get home and see my family. Of course, the CEO right away, when he heard that I was back home, he called for me and asked me if I had any family living. I said, yes, I have a sister living 3 miles out of camp here. I have another one 7, another one 14. And he says, my mother and brother are living 12 miles from here. He says, oh boy, he says, I can't believe this.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's great.
And of course I said, well, I'm sure Uncle Sam didn't have anything to do with it. I felt that an higher power had arranged that. He said, how long is it since you've seen your family? I said, 16 years. So he says, do they know, does your mother know that you're here? And I says, well, I sent her a card. All you could say on it at that time, because everything was censored, was that I'm on this side of the ocean. If I ever get a leave, I'll try and get to see you. He says, this is most amazing, he says, how would you like to go and see your mother today? Well, I says, I'm sure I could stand it if she can. And he says, well, you get ready. He says, in half an hour, I'll have a Jeep ready. And he left me right at the door.
Wow.
And Mother had just gotten the card and was still reading the card that I had been to that side of the ocean and would be to see her. So I was able to spend the day. They came back round in the evening and brought me back to camp again. So
Yeah, that's
that was a
wonderful.
wonderful experience.
Sure.
Indeed. Well, I could tell you maybe this one of the saddest experiences and how we found comfort through the grace of God. At 8.5 months, my youngest son, Mario, contracted polio, and it destroyed all of the nervous system at the base of his spine. And it was in the year 53 before the Salk vaccine came out. In fact, the Salk vaccine came out later that year. But here was a young lad that had no use of 2 legs. And my deep sorrow was, what is he going to do when he grows up and realizes what has happened to him? But you know, God gave grace. The first 2 years, I think I was inconsolable. I just couldn't really bear the heartache. But you know, as we went along, I saw the grace of God on Mario, and he's grown up to be a brilliant young man. He's married, has 2 children, lives in Puyallup, Washington, outside of Seattle. He is an executive finance director of Boeing Corporation, handles millions of dollars in 40 countries, and also leads a choir in a church in Tacoma, Washington. Outstanding soloist. And he's held choir concerts for Pastor Costin, who used to pastor in Puyallup, at the fairgrounds, where 15,000 would come out to watch the presentation and the fireworks. And so he's been a tremendous blessing. The sorrow was turned into joy, as God's hand has been upon this young lad all of his life.
That's great. Now, if you, like Brian and I are kind of similar age, do you feel like there's a big difference in the way, for instance, like people our age, do you think there's more pressure put on them to do, you know, to kind of, you know, there's so much drug and alcohol abuse and all that, it seems so rampant. And do you think that, you know, when people grow older, do they just become more conservative, or is it just the generations prior just really didn't indulge in all that so much?
Well, we do become more conservative as we grow older. We don't lose all the drives. I mean, we're still romantic. I'm still married and have a precious wife that I love so dearly. But yes, I would say the peer pressure today has to be much greater than when I was young. In high school, I attended a high school in Cleveland, Ohio, where 3,000 students were there for 3 grades, 10 through 12. And maybe 1 or 2 smoked marijuana, just 1 or 2. And believe me, they were blackballed and railroaded right out of town by the principal immediately. Well, today we know the reverse is true. The majority of our young people have experimented with that. So there is much greater peer pressure, much greater today.
Now, when you counsel, surely you counsel with a lot of younger couples in their 20s and stuff as a pastor?
Oh, yeah, teenagers, early 20s, and the 80s, 90s, you know, whatever.
Then, now, is, like, if you go into, say, if I went to visit y'all's church at Bethel, there are a lot of older couples that have been married many, many years.
Right.
And, but divorce is just so rampant. Like myself, I went through a divorce, and Brian's a gun shy. He can't line him. But anyway,
He still has to look forward to divorce.
It's almost, yeah, it almost seems like that's the pressure that's there. It's like most young people, when they think of marriage, they think of divorce anymore.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that really has to be, or is it because?
Well, it's the peer pressure again. It's the moral temperature of our society. There isn't the big stigma connected with it today because so many are involved, you know, where we have so many single-parent homes. But in our day, that was very, very rare, and if a person had a child out of wedlock, they usually disappeared out of town and had the child, and most of the relatives never knew about it. Maybe another friend out of town would take care of the child. And I think that was very adverse. Today, they have freedom to bring the child home and rear it or adopt it out, whatever. Hopefully not abort it, because it's beautiful. And so there's a different moral climate. And since there's so much permissiveness, it's easier to do a lot of things today than when we were younger.
And regarding older people, we just had 3 couples celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary in the last 2 weeks.
How about Clem Cherry, 60 years
Yes,
recently.
that's right.
60
that's
years,
right.
yeah.
So we
Give me
have
their names. I'm going to do a show here soon that we have a young newlywed couple and also someone who celebrated 50, 60
good.
years. So.
Right, we have the John
we can give you the
Eppersons, we
names.
have the Clyde Harrises,
Yes.
and the Clem Cherries are in the
Yes.
60 bracket.
Yeah.
That's great. Speaking of our group, we have 13 guidelines for our group, the needs we want to meet, and from studies we find the 13 most important needs that seniors have are the following. Love and appreciation, #1 need. The second, a useful, significant job. Thirdly, acceptance and respect. And through our activities and our groups, we try to meet that need. Fourth, to develop hobbies. Fifth, information about money and wills. We've held will clinics in the church, and we've had different ones to come and help in that area. Health information. We had a doctor come about a year ago and examine many of the eyes of our elders and seniors in our church and saved them probably from blindness. Some had cataracts they knew nothing about. They've had operations since, and their vision is 20/20.
Okay.
So we try to help there. We give learning opportunities. We try to meet their material needs. If there's a need financially with rent or food, we try to help there. We try to help them with odd jobs they need in their home, a roof repair, plumbing, leaks, things like that. We have a group in our church called Heartbeat, a number of them that will go and help the elderly with that. Transportation is such an urgent need, and we provide it through vans and private cars to our church, and shopping and services. Then someone to talk with. We try to fellowship with them and visit with them and phone them and encourage them to phone us, not only at church, but at our home phone. And we will have that fellowship with them. We provide recreational activities. And I stated before, our trips, and we're going to have table games here going on this coming year, a number of them. Finally, 13th is wholesome living arrangements. We try to make sure that they have a good living environment, nice little apartment or a nice home or whatever. So that's our basic goal in our Saints Alive group at Bethel.
Now, if you don't mind, Joe, we're winding down with in time here, but I know you've got something, another brochure there.
Yes, right.
If you don't mind showing that.
The Santa Clara County Senior Handbook of this year, 1990-91, I picked up 100 copies of this. If you go to the office, I think they charge you $2, $3, but through our church you get them for nothing. But they're located here at 1030 South Winchester Boulevard, Suite 100 in San Jose. Then they have a 800 number and a 408 number. The 800 number is 255-9333. The 408 number is 243-8570. And here it will show you the nursing, home care, the pickup, the shopping, hospice care, just innumerable needs of seniors. Really, this is a handbook every senior in town should have.
Great. We're gonna wind down here, but I just want to ask you guys one last quick question. What would you say to the senior citizen that is watching the show right now, Dave?
Keep active. Don't stay in your room or in a home. Try and get out and be active and come to join the group, the Saints Alive in the church. We're always doing something or going somewhere, and that keeps us active, and there is a good fellowship in that group, and they run from 55 up to
105.
I think the oldest one's in 92. Okay.
Dr. Leland Keys, one of the pastors of Bethel, was at our meeting Tuesday. He's 91 years old.
Yeah.
Dr. Leland Keys.
He was active up until 3 weeks ago, teaching a class every Saturday morning and teaching Sunday school until just 3 weeks ago. He felt it was time to give up at 91.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, Joe Ferrante and Dave Caves, and along with Mason Sturgill. We want you to join us next week, if you will, at 7 o'clock Monday night for What's Up in the 90s. I think we're going to have one of two shows, either Teen Challenge of San Jose, or we're going to have some of the cast from Angry Housewives on the show. So we hope you join us next week. See you later.